I want to tell you a story. A story that happened this past Friday morning about, 3 in the morning maybe? I can't remember. But as my 5-month-old daughter slept in her crib, she was robbed. She was robbed by Senate Leader Mitch McConnell, Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer, and she was robbed by the other senators and congressmen who voted in favor of the McConnell-Schumer spending bill. And the president legitimized it with the stroke of a pen. You see, they were passing a spending bill to avert a government shutdown. And that spending plan increases federal spending by about $300 billion through 2019. Here's the problem, and the part where Congress tightened the financial noose around the necks of our children and our grandchildren. They don't have the money to spend. Let me read you a headline that was first reported by the Washington Post. Quote, "The U.S. government is set to borrow nearly $1 trillion this year, an 84% jump from last year. So the national debt is over $20 trillion, and the U.S. is having to borrow more money? Sounds like somebody has a spending problem. That somebody is Congress." And you know, Senator Rand Paul, he tried unsuccessfully to add an amendment to the spending bill, which would have kept lower budget caps. Now, I have to stop and say, when it comes to fiscal responsibility, it's hard to find anybody better than Rand Paul. In fact, if I were to run for president, I'm pretty sure that guy would be my Treasury Secretary. But the senator from Kentucky, he was denied an amendment vote by the GOP leadership. And in fact, when Senator Paul tried to force a vote, the Republican leadership chided him. Paul ended up taking criticism from John Cornyn of Texas and John Thune of South Dakota. But honestly, if I had to choose between a government shutdown or unsustainable, unethical, out-of-control spending, I side with Rand Paul over Cornyn, Thune, and McConnell any day of the week. So now you have the gist of what happened with the spending bill. But this show isn't just for me to vent and complain. It's to inform and empower you. So I came up with a few ways that we can respond to Congress, how we can respond to them just throwing fiscal responsibility to the wind. So let's go over a few. Number one, if you give money to the RNC, the Republican National Committee, which in turn helps reelect these big government politicians, that has to stop. Like right now. You've probably received those surveys in the mail. They're big surveys, maybe about 2 or 3 pages from the RNC, and they're wanting to know your opinion going forward, how to craft their platform. Yeah, they don't care what's on that survey. In fact, they only care about the check and donation portion at the end of that survey. Because if the GOP did care about what you think, they would be fighting for what the constituency wants. So one alternative to giving to the RNC is donate to FreedomWorks. FreedomWorks is a grassroots conservative organization that vets and endorses politicians who care about actual conservatism and the Constitution. That includes fiscal responsibility. FreedomWorks, they're the ones that give us politicians like Senator Mike Lee, Representative Justin Amash of Michigan, or Thomas Massey of Kentucky. Real strong, conservative, constitutionally minded guys. Those are the ones that FreedomWorks elects. Go to www.freedomworks.org, check them out, and consider giving them a donation. Even if it's just $5, I'm sure it makes a difference. But we have to send the message to the GOP with our wallets. Another idea comes from Congressman Thomas Massey of Kentucky. You should go to the sources section I always provide, and you should watch the video by Congressman Massey, which explains how continuing resolutions and omnibus bills are not the way Congress is supposed to fund the government. Basically, continuing resolutions, or as they're called, CRs, and omnibus bills, they lump all of spending together, and they vote on it in one big package, and it makes it easier for politicians to tie their pet policy projects to the spending bill, and makes it easier to hold that bill up if they want to. So Congress is actually supposed to pass 12 separate spending bills to fund the government. This way, Nancy Pelosi can't come in on a vote to fund the VA, and she won't hold up that bill to tie an immigration vote to it, because you're simply voting to fund the VA, and I guess they think it would be political suicide to, it would be political suicide to hold up a VA funding bill just to get a vote on immigration. Senator Rand Paul has also introduced legislation called S-2339, the Government Shutdown Prevention Act of 2018. In a press release by Senator Paul, it said, instead of government shutting down operations over stalled funding in the future, this bill would institute a 1% cut to then current funding levels for any agency, program, or activity that Congress failed to fund by the start of the fiscal year. Every 90 days thereafter, funding would be reduced by another 1% if an agreement is still not enacted. So this way the government never shuts down, it just automatically starts to scale back. And I believe I saw where Rand Paul said that this would balance the budget within 4 years, I think it was. Don't quote me on that, but I think it was 4 years. So contact your legislators. I have the link down in my sources section, and tell them no more omnibus bills, no more continuing resolutions. Tell them you want to see fiscal responsibility, and tell them to co-sponsor S-2339 by Senator Rand Paul. Number 3, which is this one is sometimes controversial, or there's some contention between whether it would actually work or not. Support a convention of states. Article 5 in the Constitution makes a way for people to, or the states to put forward constitutional amendments without Congress. They send a representative from the state to a convention. They propose constitutional amendments. And if a majority of states support that amendment and ratify it, then it becomes part of the Constitution. This way, you don't need Congress, and you can put forth amendments like term limits, a balanced budget amendment, and limits on federal spending and growth. Stuff that you're never going to see from the current lot in Congress. So if you want to know more about that, check the sources section and watch the video by PragerU, or you can go to conventionofstates.com. Check it out, guys. Number 4, stop voting for politicians who support runaway spending. As I mentioned, FreedomWorks is a great resource to see who you might like to support in an election. I've also included in my sources section how the House and the Senate voted on the spending bill, so you can check out how your legislators voted, and you can use that to determine whether you want to support them or not in a re-election bid. I know that when certain politicians come up for re-election here in Texas, I'm definitely going to be taking this spending bill vote into account. Another way to get these guys out of office, if it requires you voting for a third party, do it. Have you ever voted for a libertarian candidate, or have you ever even heard of the Constitution Party? It's not a crime to break from the two-party system and vote for a third party if you have to, because you look at what the two-party system has gotten us into, and anything has got to be better than this. So, ladies and gentlemen, Washington is not going to fix itself. That is a job for you. That is a job for me. And the people must institute change, or the spending problem is just going to get worse and worse. And sometimes I wonder if this is going to be the thing that pushes the United States into a digital currency. We get to the point where we spend so much that our economy is in shambles, our currency is worthless, and we have to turn to something like digital currency so this doesn't happen again. It's just a thought. Guys, this is the Rich Carroll program. I'm your host, Rich Carroll. Thank you for tuning in. God bless.